Hey, let's take a look at the recently updated Waldorf Q Editor. So here is my Q keyboard, and it's the standard model, so it doesn't have any analog filters or so. What we're going to do is set up the editor, assign the MIDI, check the global settings, and add audio and MIDI tracks in live to get sample accurate automation and also sample accurate MIDI sequencing. So first things first, let's check the global settings. So in a Q you need to be in multi-mode, and the multi has to be selected. So this is multi and the multi-mode. Then you can click on a global settings, and what I've done and how the editor works is that global channel is on 16 and system exclusive ID is 0 for me. Depending how many Qs you have in your setup, you can kind of play around and assign patches to right location. Also, I've got a Q card, so I've got extra memory, but that doesn't really matter when you use the editor. But anyway, we can go back to multi settings. In global, you can have your local keyboard on or off depending how you play your setup, and arpeggio send is off for me. Control send is control plus SX. Also control receive is on, and I think that's all that really matters here. RX program change is number and bank, and then TX program change is also number and bank. I think that's pretty much all for the Q. Now there is a caveat with the Q and the Waldorf memory concept. So when you send a preset from the librarian into a part, the current part and the program bank combination is preserved for this buffer edit. So you can't have multiple presets loaded on A1, for example, because every time you load something into A1 it affects all the other parts. So what we did with the editor, there is a nice little warning box coming up if you've got a bank and program conflict, so you can avoid that. You can obviously disable it, but let's take a look at the editor. So this is all new, quite recently updated, and we are quite happy with it. It's got a sequencer editor, all the parts, parameters, etc. So here is the new layout. Obviously not much has changed, but we've done some pretty interesting stuff like resizable UI and something else. Overall usability and compatibility is a lot smoother than the previous version, and it's not bugging out. So in multi settings you've got all of the global parameters, what you can find from the Q as well, like the program RX and program TX settings. Local keyboard button is here as well, and also the arpeggiator send. Now you have an extended mixer view where you can choose all of the fancy MIDI filtering, etc. Right, and this is obviously the multi editor. So when you load a multi in Q, it doesn't have any, it doesn't send the programs with it as well, because all that the multi does is sends bank and program information into your Q. So when you load a multi, let's say it has bank B preset to load it into part 1. So then the hardware refers into that location. So every time you write a bank into your hardware, it's going to get that different patch. If it's been overwritten, it's going to assign that different patch into your part. So yeah, device ID is 0, global channel is 16. That's how I like it. It's easier for me to do all of the multi-timbral layering on a MIDI tracks. Then we obviously can choose a different UI theme. So we have a Halloween, blue, red plus for those who's got the analog filter Q plus in the setup, or Phoenix edition. So well, I've got the yellow one, so I'll stick with that. It's easy for me to kind of, when I pop up a plugin window, I know that alright, this is my yellow Q keyboard. Then we can choose the model, basic, standard Q, and the Q plus, and I think the Omega is the same as Q plus, not entirely sure, but we'll stick with the Q. And then what we need to do is assign the MIDI ports. There is my Q keyboard, and there is the output. So now it's getting data from the Q. It's going to take some time to receive all of the data. And there we go. The UI says data request completed. Editor data now matches hardware data. So we're all good there. Now we can go to librarian tab, and here you can see all of the different parts, and you can assign a different program for each part. So on a multi-mode mixer page, you can assign a different output for each part, and the key ranges and velocity ranges, and even mute or solo parts, but we'll stick with this view now. Now what we've done, when you change a part on the editor, it changes parts on hardware as well. So there we go, part 1 is now active on hardware, and now we can load a program from the librarian. Let's say we take a Seraphic Music plug lead, and there we have the warning saying that attention, the selected part bank and program combination clashes with part 4. So part 4 has a bank A preset for loaded already. So in this case I can click yes, and it will find a free bank location from the hardware, let's say B and program 4, and it will assign the it will assign the single buffer into bank B program 4. If I click no, then it will replace what's already loaded for part 4, and that's not ideal, but we can do that because we are kind of getting fresh started, so it doesn't really matter. And if we click cancel, we can adjust the program and bank combination manually from the UI, but in that case it's going to check out if there's any interference with other parts. So let's click no, and that's going to replace the part, and we should have this program assigned to part 1, and we need to assign a audio track for this. So there's quite a long list, so let me find there is Q, MIDI in. Okay, audio is coming, I can see it, and now we enable monitoring. Right, there we go. So that's kind of the simplest way to go about. Now we can go to part 2 and we can load a different program. Let's try that one. And now if we play the keyboard, we can still hear part 1 because all of the MIDI data is coming into part 1. So to get MIDI data going into part 2, there is a button on the UI saying show keyboard. So if we click that one, we can then force all of the incoming MIDI data into part 2. So this only works when the DAW is not in a playback mode. So, yep, there we go. Now let's say part 3. Let's try a different sound from the classic set that comes, or you can purchase, or you used to be able to purchase it. Right. So there we go. It's really straightforward. So you can assign different programs to different parts, and every time you load up your project, it's going to dump that sound data from the editor into your hardware buffer. So whatever you have assigned in the buffer, it shows a little E behind the program number, so you know it's edited and it's in a buffer. It doesn't overwrite anything unless you do so yourself. Obviously we can do category search from the librarian, we can do search by name, we can view different librarian data, say multis, but like I said, all of the multis are only remembering the location of the programs used. So if anything changes in the hardware, then the multi is not going to assign the sounds properly. We have buttons. You can load a different button into each part, and then there is drums. Now the drums need a individual editor, which we are working on right now, and it's going to be coming out soon. So anything you do with the drums, it's not going to work at this very moment. And still, speaking of the librarian, we can obviously request data from program banks A, B and C, and if you've got the memory card like I do, you can then request from bank X, which is the memory card. You can obviously store your currently active bank, which is this one, and you can then store the data into any location on your hardware. We can overwrite the bank if we do any edits, we can save it as, and we can import pulse and pulse 2 banks into the editor as well. Also the micro Q banks, you can import those either MIDI or the system exclusive format. Our editor has the ability to understand how the bank is created, and it will adapt the settings for the Q. Same applies with the Blofeld banks. So you can take a Blofeld bank and import that. And then if you have added banks into the library manually, you can refresh the folders, and then there is the librarian preferences where you can adjust the librarian working to your liking. Ignore buffer warnings, that's quite self-explanatory, so you can ignore the warning messages and you will always override the buffer if it clashes. You can create a new empty bank which will populate all the slots, and you can open data folder which will reveal the folder on your hard drive. You can then add banks into the batches folder as you go. Right, so let's go out from the librarian and have a look at the other pages. So oscillators page, you can do anything with the oscillators and pitch and the mixer. Going back to batch librarian just for a little while, we have this new feature called show quick edit. So whatever you load in parts, you have this quick view where you can assign different parameters to the XY pad, and you have all of the quick sound adjustment parameters right here. So if I load monolith, it's going to populate all of the settings into this quick view. Right, okay, now let's continue. Go to filters, so you can choose a different filter. The UI will update as well. You can link filter settings. You can also go to utilities menu, and I think it's on the UI, or it's on the edit. Yeah, it's editor preferences, but because the menu is very long, you can't see the item. It's saying filter link offset values. So if you have a different value for a filter settings, then it's going to offset those. Let's say I'm moving this envelope amount right here, and we can see there is a different value for a filter 1, so it's going to offset those. If the offset selection is off, then it's going to migrate the same settings when you turn the knobs. Then we have the envelopes and LFO, where you can do all three LFOs, modifiers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can do modulation. FX tab, where you can assign four parts can each have 2 effects, so there is no global effect in a queue. When it goes to part 5, then all of the effects are disabled because there's not enough DSP on a queue. So yeah, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, they can have individual effects. Also, there is all of the effects that come with the latest OS, like 5.1 delay and delay clocked, and tape delay, reverb. And then there is arpeggiator, where you can do kind of a user arpeggiator, little edits. But then we have the sequencer, which is a totally different beast. I'm not very familiar how the sequencer works because I do all of the sequencing on my DAW, so this is kind of a gray area for me. You can choose a different part which you want to view for the sequence, and yeah, I think that's pretty much about the editor. Now let's talk about automation in live. So if we change the view and if we move the knobs on the editor, we can't see anything. Oh, there is filter to cut off automatically. How did that happen? Anyway, we can go to unfold parameters and click config here, and then if we move the knobs on the UI, they will it will add the knobs into the live, and then you can do all of the automation as you wish. Now let's talk about MIDI and how the MIDI works the best. So because our editors doesn't have audio DSP in them, there is no way the editor knows the exact location of the DAW, and therefore it cannot be sample accurate, and it cannot compensate the audio engine or the DAW playback. So therefore, always create MIDI tracks into your DAW and assign them to your hardware directly. Let me see where my Q is getting its notes from. Where is my Q? There it is, and it's assigned to port 31. Okay, so MIDI out 31 is Q, and now if we enable that part, we can hear the patch from part 1. Let's create a second track and then assign it to channel 2, which corresponds to part 2 in the hardware or in the software. So that's part 2, and then let's duplicate one more and assign it to channel 3. So there is part 3 program. So do all of the sequencing on the MIDI tracks so you get tight timing. Obviously in live you can adjust the MIDI output synchronization from here, MIDI clock, sync delay. I'm not sure if this affects how the MIDI notes are going out, but I'm sure that someone who knows live better than me knows how to adjust the MIDI outgoing MIDI notes delay. Right, so I think that's pretty much all to it. Like I said, the programs and the buffer, be careful with that, because, well, it depends how many synths you've got, how many parts you really need to use with the hardware. I've got the Q and all of the outputs assigned to my console, and all of the audios going with Dante and AVB network into my main computer, so I can use individual outputs per part if I so wish to do. Alright, let's see. I think I overwrote that one previously. Now the part 2 is going on a sub 2, so if I add a new track, where is the audio coming? Oh, probably all of the AD converters are not on, so can't get the audio from there. So let's assign them back to main out. So okay, yeah, I think that's all. Thanks for watching, and if you want to talk about the editor, hop over to our Discord server. You can find the link from the description. And if you want to support our work, go to ko-fi.com and you can buy us a coffee. We do consume it quite a lot, so anything that supports us, that's gonna ensure that we can do free updates and keep this product excellent. Okay, if you have any questions, hop into our Discord or drop me a question in a video and I'll do my best to answer it. Alright, until next time, bye.